had an interesting conversation yesterday with a realtor. He had a listing at about $729,000 and received an offer within 10 days of putting that house on the market. The offer came in at $713,000, and the seller said, "Okay, we'll take $713,000." It was a trustee sale. They priced it well, and they were happy with it. It was what's it, about 2% off the list price. But the seller made an interesting point. He asked his realtor, "Is the buyer going to think they paid too much because I'm not countering them?" Personally, I had never thought of it from that side. I think of it from the seller's side. I don't want to lose my offer, because usually your first offer is your best offer. Not always, but historically, first offer is best offer. So you don't want to push that buyer away. Is it worth it for $10,000 to lose a buyer? Because the next time you may not get any offers, and by the time you reduce the price of that listing price of the house, you're going to end up with less. What are your thoughts on this, Kathleen?
Well, I think every situation is unique, and I think it's basic human behavior for a buyer to wonder, could I have gotten the home for less? And for a seller to question, gosh, if I countered, could I have gotten more? The psychology on the seller side is, as you mentioned, that they might lose it if they counter. So we look at every offer and every situation unique. How many offers have come in? What is the risk of losing the buyer? Oftentimes, just having a conversation with the buyer's agent will give us some insight as to the buyer's motivation and whether or not they might be willing to come up a little bit. Is there a risk if you counter that the buyer will say, "I'm done," and you lose the offer? Absolutely. There isn't any transaction that doesn't have some element of risk to it.
And you can accept the offer and the buyer can still walk, because everyone knows about buyer's remorse.
That's true. And or there could be something that shows up on an inspection that causes the buyer to decide that they don't want the home. Or what we see a lot in today's market is that the buyer may get a job transfer or may have a reduction in pay or lose their job altogether and therefore be unable to qualify for the loan and close.
So, Kathleen, is there a rule of thumb when you receive an offer? If it's within 2 or 3% of the list price, do you coach your sellers to say, "Hey, look, this is really close. This is in the range of what we were expecting"? Is there a rule of thumb that you don't counter? Or
are we talking on regular transactions now or short sales?
On a regular transaction.
On a regular transaction, I always start with my sellers with what the seller's goal and motivation is. So that is the point from which my launching pad, if you will. Oftentimes, sellers will lose focus of what their goal is. So my job is to just present all the data and then bring them back to their why. What is their motivation for selling? And when we're looking at a small amount, we're talking insignificant. The example you gave earlier was $729 and an offer at $713 came in. You're also looking at the seller's net. So if they have a substantial amount of equity, $16,000 may not tremendously impact their bottom line. It may, if they're planning on buying another home and they know what their price point is, and that might just make or break their deal for what they plan on doing. So every situation is unique, and we have to take it back to the seller's situation. Every specific transaction and seller and buyer, whether it's a short sale or a regular sale, I see it as unique as a fingerprint. Everybody has a different motivation and a different why for their buying a home or for selling a home.